yourself, am I doing this right? By thinking about what does your pot look like if you were to cut it in half with a wire? That's why I made you do that at the end of Ceramics 1. That's what we do, Zach, at the end of Ceramics 1. Every student has to make a cylinder and a bowl, and we cut it in half. And to pass the final exam, you have to make it properly. So if people don't make the bottom of the cylinder flat, they have to go do another one. So you can pass it, you can just try over and over again in a 2-hour period. Anyway, flat bottom, straight sides. You want an even thickness all the way up and down. And these are the ways that you kind of test yourself. Am I doing this right? The other thing is with the bowl, as you see in the cutaway, this being a little bowl. You know, do I have enough clay down the bottom to trim a proper foot? I'm seeing a lot of pots that are back on the firing shelf that aren't trimmed properly. They're trimmed like Ceramics 1 pots. And even then, I taught you how to trim a foot, but people are forgetting. They're forgetting to keep their pots covered up and keep them wet so they can trim them. So they dry out completely. And I'll show you right here, perfect example. This was a demonstration I did, and I let it dry out completely. Now this isn't the proper way to trim a foot because it's completely dry. It's really hard to do it at this point. So at this point I should just recycle this and make another one. I know you're pressed on time, but I think it's really important that you actually get to these things so that stuff before they dry out, and then start to clean them up. Like this one has a little extra clay hanging on the outside, and it still needs a handle to make a cup. You know, take the time to take your fetlet knife or your wooden trim knife, and you know, take the sharp edges off. Pay attention to the craftsmanship. Sign the bottom. Put a handle on before it dries out. These are all part of your responsibilities. If you don't do that, I got to think about like all that little sharp stuff you left on there is points off. If you think about it, if you were to, you know, do a presentation and you left out certain elements, and this is a presentation of your work, you're leaving things off that need to get done. And I wanted to really encourage that. Don't forget about those things. They are important. Craftsmanship at this level, at Ceramics 2 level, starts to go up a little bit. And the expectation gets a little bit higher. So I kind of want to emphasize those things to you. I kind of need to. It's almost like a requirement that I have as I'm teaching you guys. So let's get on this basics again. We're spinning the other way. You know, if you're still getting initiated with the wheel, remember, we're 5 weeks in. So 6 weeks starts on Monday, week 6 of this semester. And you know, we can't work just making stuff right up to the end of the semester. We got to start or stop making things at a certain point and then just do all fires like we did in Ceramics 1. So with the centering, remember you want to press that clay, control the outside, but also the top. And I'm doing that with my thumb here as I push down. And I'm controlling the clay on all the sides. You get your centering down first. Don't open up until you're in center. It's really not worth doing until you're in center. And then slow down. More moderate pace, I should say. That feels a little comfortable. That's kind of slow, but yep. The pedals are a little funny. A lot of times I'll start the opening with my thumb, but usually I use these 2 fingers to finish the opening, like that. Just pushing it down. And the more that you do this, the more understanding you get about how deep you're going. You start to develop a perception of how thick that clay is between your fingers and the wheel bit. So another reason to practice is to kind of develop that understanding. And I know I can do a little bit more. Now, there's another way you can check. stop your wheel, and you take your needle tool and slide it all the way down through the clay. Slide your finger down to where it meets the clay and pull it up. And that's a little too thick for a cup. That's what I'm making here. I'm going to make a cylinder cup for you. And then you can watch this video of Michael's recording for us. If you want to post it, you can watch it, and maybe it'll be a good guide for you. Get my speed right again. Just thought that was weird. Good enough. So now, if I'm making a cylinder, I don't want to leave that narrow opening. I want to open it up wide and flat. And basically what I'll do is put my fingers in and kind of pulling out, or kind of squeezing out if it's something small. I just kind of squeeze with my fingertips. And now I'm definitely pulling, just more of my wrist dragging the clay outwards to get that flat bottom. And I usually open it up a little bit wider than I want to end up. If you have to clean the bottom up, sometimes you get a little pokey that's sticking up in the middle. Clean that up now. Make it nice and flat now. Because once you get the sides up, it's harder to do, right? You know that from experience. So now, I've got this undercut here that is perfect. If I want to lift the clay up, I've just got to push up underneath of it. Usually I use two hands, but right now I just want to demonstrate that if you just push from the outside underneath that undercut, and you do it the right way, the clay will naturally come up. One of the things this hand is doing though on the inside is giving a little bit of outward pressure so it will thin the clay down and also keep it even. So without having it there, you kind of run the risk of making things uneven, and you will never thin the clay down if you don't have one hand on the inside and one on the outside. And it's almost always my right hand on the outside, my left hand on the inside. If you're right-handed, and I start at the bottom, and I'm slowly pushing out a little bit from the inside, but more pressure from the outside pushing in. See how much more I was able to grow that clay because I'm compressing it between my fingers. It's just a little slight compression. Not so much to kind of flare the clay wide open. Now, oftentimes you'll get an uneven top. You got two possibilities. You can try to compress it and even it out, or you can cut it off with your needle tool. I think I could probably compress it. So what I do is run a finger on the inside and a thumb on the outside and push down with the sponge and try to even that clay out. And I think I was able to do that. If you have to constantly cut it with the needle tool, you keep losing clay. All right, I'm going to go back down to the bottom again, and how you figure out how to get your hands in is up to you. But I'm pushing in the bottom again. And I'm pushing out now right where my outside hand is. My inside hand pushes out. And I'm dragging the clay up more into a cylinder shape and less that cone. And it's starting to look like a cup. Like that basic cylinder. Push out again from the inside, and in from the outside, and have some thick clay there. I want to thin down, and move that clay up. And then, dug in a little bit down the bottom, and try to smooth that. My sponge. Kind of iron it out in there. All right, I want to show you how to use your tools a little bit to help with the shaping, because they can come into play. And one that I do like is this rib. You have two different ribs that you can have in your toolkit. If you don't have both of these, I have tons of them inside that closet. You can have one. If you don't have both shapes, one is kind of rounded and one's pointy. This has rounded ends on it, and I'm going to use this one to start off. And think about what kind of shape I want to make. Maybe kind of like that other one, it'll go in a little bit and flare outwards. So I'm going to start off with this, and I can push out right where the rib is, and I can straighten up the sides if I want with it. Then, if I want a curve, I could use this curve up at the top and kind of push the clay to the curve. You see, and it gives it a little bit of flair. I don't know if I like that so much. If I don't, then I'll cut it off. Good time to demonstrate. I could straighten it out if I really wanted to, but I got plenty of clay here. If you're not using your needle tool properly, that'll make a difficulty. Just steady your hands, and I'm doing that by bracing and just letting the point cut through. Once it cuts through, you can lift up, and you can cut your top even if it's uneven or if you have too much clay for the shape you want to make. I'm going to round that off with my sponge. And show you with this pointed road. If I take the point, I can dig down the bottom and remove some excess clay. So I start above the base and then push downwards. And using that tool removes excess clay I didn't need down there. You know, less trimming is less work. I kind of like how this is shaping up as a straight cylinder. You know, if you wanted to make it very clean and simple, you can. Maybe add a little ridge at the top, just to define the ending point there. Simple cylinder, goes a long way. Now down at the bottom, I usually put a bevel on the bottom. Makes it easier to clean it up later. And I use the trim knife, turn it so that the knife blade is facing upwards, and I turn that angle towards the turning clay, and just push in. You could also use that little triangle tool that I have over there on the shelf. I've shown you how to use that before. Of course, it'd be important to plan this out so that you can put a handle on it before it hardens up, or else, you know, you could have a tumbler, but if you're making a cup with a handle, put a handle on it, you know? And if you forget, make another one. There's no reason to just give up. I'm gonna grab a towel here. If you start to run out of bats, learn how to pick your pots up. Just by grabbing it, lifting it, picking it up. Set that guy over there. Actually, here, we should do this. Let's cut it. Set that up. I want to show you what the cutaway looks like. Hey, listen, put your finger on the top of that.
Right here?
Yeah, just keep it from lifting.
Okay.
Another one on that side.
Okay.
Okay, keep it from lifting. Push down, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's gonna mess it up a little bit. There we go.
Okay.
Okay. That's how you test yourself. Just cut it in half. See if you got the flat bottom, even wall thickness up to the top. It's just clay. You know, it's not like you lost a lot of stuff. Boom. Let's put that in there. Centering is the same. Just gonna wet the clay down, push into it with my left hand really hard. Oops, so hard that I'm coming unstuck. Slam it on there real good. You want to push into it really hard down at the base. Get the base in center. Then push it down from the top. That works really good. If you're working with a big ball clay or really struggling, you can try coming in from the other side and pulling in. Different people center different ways. I find it works better if you're just pushing all in the same direction. There's kind of an economy of your movement and economy of your efforts. If you're working in the same way, as opposed to opposites. I got a weird lump in here, but I'll just see if I can work through it. until you get the thing in center. For a bowl, I try to get the clay up a little bit higher. And I start the centering, or the opening the same way with the thumb. I just kind of push in lightly, right where the center is. But I usually, again, don't finish with my thumb. I don't have as much control with the thumb. I'll finish with these two fingers, push them in. But in this case, I'm actually using my perception to figure out if I can leave enough clay for a foot. And I want to leave about a half an inch to start out with. That's pretty good. A little extra, because then you can trim the foot on properly. The problem is if you let it dry out like this guy. Now you've got this real thick foot down the bottom that's likely to blow up, or it has a lot of weight there, and the interior curve and the flat bottom don't match. So I know it's pretty thick between like this point and this point. That's not good. So I'm going to go down a little bit deeper. Now, some of you that are struggling with the bowl and how that opens, watch this. It is just kind of a rock of my hand where I'm kind of guiding it out. My inside hand kind of just controls the outside. Keeps the spread from going too far out. The bowls just want to come out. So I'm going to take my foot off the pedal. My inside hand is going to do that. I'm going to make a bowl to start from the inside. The outside won't look like a bowl, but the inside should. It kind of defines your bowl by pushing up and out. And that whole time, the whole time I'm looking at that inside. So start out your bowl like that, so that the inside looks like a bowl. The outside doesn't, but I'm going to make that match. And that's by digging up underneath and taking that thick clay and pulling it out. Again, a lot of this is really just basic. And if you continue to struggle, maybe we need to work together a little bit more. Some professors have office hours to go over English papers. I have office hours that nobody shows up for, where I can help people if they need extra help. I very rarely have anybody show up for office hours, except for maybe my work study, who's looking for more work to do. That's the other thing. Tori being the work study, she's here Tuesday and Wednesday nights. So tonight will be one of the nights, 6:30 to 9. And she's an accomplished potter. She's done very well. And she actually can help with some tutoring if you come at night. If your team allows for a study hall, some of you are on teams, tell them you need to come for study hall. Come to the ceramics room instead of being inside the library. So what I'm going to do is push underneath the bottom. And now I got this thick clay, and I'm going to squeeze it up and out. And I start in the center each time. I'm pushing in from the outside. I'm pushing out from the inside. And what that does is it compresses the clay. And I guide it outwards very slowly. And one thing that keeps me from moving around a lot, you see I'm bracing on that splash pan? You can brace somehow. Keep your elbows planted, you can tighten your body so that you're not moving. Gross body movements will kind of mess up your pot. And so, do that, pushing out pretty hard from the inside. Watching that shape evolve. So where that clay was real stocky and solid, starting to stretch it upwards. Now, how far you push it depends on your skill. The more you push it, the more clay you get out live, the more skilled you have to be. Sometimes people quit while they're ahead so that they can trim the base and get rid of all that excess, but make sure you do that if you're going to stop. Or if you want to really push your limits, you can do that. Test your skill and build your skill by bringing the clay, which is down here, up and out. So that's what I'm going to try to do. As you get wider, you want to slow down because the outside rim is spinning faster than the bottom. It's one of those properties of physics. And I don't try to thin the rim down, too much. Sometimes people try to get the height out of the last part of the rim. Really, all this clay down here is what I need if I want to make my pot bigger, my bowl. If my right hand wasn't braced, it would be really hard to do this. But since it's very stable, I'm just kind of resting this one on that one through the clay. Very light pressure at the end there. It's hard to judge that from where you're watching, but start out with more pressure in the bottom. Alright, I'm going to go to the tool again to help finish. But you could just stop at this point, let it firm up, turn it upside down, and trim a foot on the bottom, and that'd be fine. I'm going to try this round nose rib, the round end on it, and a little slower speed. And I'm going to start at the bottom, push in, and we'll slowly start pushing out, right where the rib is, and using it to help shape and even stiffen and smooth the clay at the outside. The clay is the rib is hard, being a wooden rib, and when you push out to it, you're actually compacting the clay a little bit, stiffening it. Now, if you push too hard, we're going to twist it and mess it up. So you have to learn your pressure. And the only way you do that is, again, practice. How hard to press on the clay. It comes as a feel that you develop. This rib can also be usable, the flexible ones, especially if you have a curve. And I do have one up here that I'd like to emphasize. The rim of that bowl is kind of round. Let's say I want it kind of flat. I can support it with a thumb and a finger. Lightly push in. Now I have kind of a sharp, angular rim, which can be a neat design if you like that. I'll take off a little bit of the sharpness. A little bit down the bottom that looks kind of funky, but I'll tell you what, I like the interior. Let's take a look at it. The outside has that weird interruption there, but the inside, if I look at the inside, I don't have it. See? It's a nice continuous curve along the inside. I think I'll just quit while I'm ahead, because I know if I let this firm up, I flip it upside down, with the trim tool, I can knock that off and make a nice curve from that lip all the way down to where my foot starts, and that interruption will be gone. I'll just trim it away. And right now I can feel this is too heavy of a bowl. And that's because I have some excess clay down here. Well, you can trim it, and that's what you need to do. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave that because I like that interior curve. It has a really nice shape to it. That's kind of, for me, the essence of a bowl, that inside where you're going to be, eating out of, or putting things and looking at. You make the outside match the inside by trimming. Very rarely do you ever trim the inside of the bowl. Usually you wouldn't do it at all. But then again, I don't like to make too many rules. If you have to hollow it out with a spoon, I don't care what you do, what technique you use, what tools you use. I care what it looks like at the end. That's the most important part. I would say leave the inside nice and clean, and then trim the outside. That's how I would approach that. So consider that. All right, I'm going to leave that. At this point, like if you need to know how to make a handle, call me over, I'll show you how to make a handle. That's what I'm gonna do next, but off camera. I'll just take it from here, make a I wanna make a handle before I lose this cup entirely. And also my signature stamp, I wanna do that, sign the bottom. Make sure you're signing your work on the bottom. And as you get dry work, bring it back to the firing, because we're starting to do firings already. There are some pieces up there on that cart that have been misfired, and I'm not sure whose is whose, and then there's some sculptures that's from my